Believe it or not, Mr. Josh was once a kid just like you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the story you are about to see is true. The names have been changed to protect the innocent.
Today's story is about the Great Frog Hunt. I remember bedtime used to be super important at the DeVore house. When I was little, there were very important times that different kids would have to go to bed. And at this time in my life, I had to go to bed in 1997 at around 7:30 p.m. And my older brother Jimmy and myself were two of the three kids at the time. The only other kid that was in my family at that point was my little sister Julie, and she was just a baby. Well, Jimmy and I went to bed when our dad asked us to at 7:30 p.m. And one of the rules of the DeVore house was that once you go to bed, you stay there and you don't get up until the next morning. You could get in deep trouble for getting out of bed and trying to go get a drink of water or something without waiting till the next day. So one night in particular, Jimmy and I are laying in bed and we hear my dad rustling outside our window in the backyard. And we were trying to figure out what he was doing, but we didn't know. Well, he came around back into the house and then we heard him push open our door. And he goes, "Hey guys, are you still awake?" For a moment we wondered if we were gonna be in trouble. But the tone in his voice made us think maybe we're not in trouble, maybe everything's okay. And we said, "Yeah, we're still awake." And he said, "Guys, I have a surprise for you. Come, come, come." So we jumped out of bed. It's pitch black outside. He takes us through the living room, and my grandma and my mom are both in the living room. And at this time, my grandma Mary actually lived with us, which was so fun to have your grandma live at the house. Her favorite thing to make was macaroni and cheese, and Jimmy and I loved whatever grandma used to make. So grandma used to keep flashlights in her purse, so that way if she was ever at the grocery store at night, she could find her way to the car and find her keys or get into the house. So she hands Jimmy and I each a flashlight. Man, the batteries work on this thing. It's set. And then we tried to open the sliding glass door, but our sliding glass door was really heavy back then. So my dad reaches over us and pulls open the sliding glass door. With our flashlights in hand, we go out into the darkness. We stayed right as close to my dad as we possibly could. And I could tell wherever he was taking us, he was going the long way around. So we're kind of wandering through the backyard, and every once in a while you might trip over a hole that Jimmy and I had dug in the backyard when we were playing Army Men or whatever. But finally he gets to the back corner. And this part of the backyard was a place that you were never supposed to go. There was this big black box, and it had a green lid on top, and it was heavy. And underneath, if you ever lifted up the box, there was a bunch of sprinkler system units. And we knew that if we were ever found turning the knobs on the sprinklers, that we would get in deep trouble. Well, my dad was with us, and this was his idea, so I figured it was okay. We're back there in the corner, and Dad says, "Shh, shh, 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 shh." And we listened. And we heard a sound that we weren't used to hearing in the backyard. I mean, we live in the desert. I lived on 709 West Twinberry Lane, Lancaster, California. That's over on like 10th Street West or 7th Street West and like Avenue H. So we live over there. There's an overpass that they put in when I was a kid. We just live in the desert. So at nighttime, if you're quiet, the only thing you can hear is crickets. Well, this time we heard a sound we weren't used to. My dad says, "Do you know what that is?" We're like, "I don't know." So then he reaches down and he picks up that big black box with the green lid and boom, sets it on the ground next to the sprinkler system. And Jimmy and I turn our flashlights and we point them right at the sprinkler system. And that's when we saw not one, but two huge bullfrogs. I don't know if you've ever seen a bullfrog, but they are incredible. I reach my hand in there and I grab one of those guys, and he is slimy and smelly and green, and he has all these bumps on him, and I'm squeezing him with my hand, and my mom and my grandma are yelling, "Don't hurt the little bullfrogs, take good care of them." And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm probably squeezing this guy too hard, but if you didn't squeeze them hard enough, they jump out of your hand. Now my older brother Jimmy, he was like, I don't really want to mess with these guys. I'd rather just let Josh play with the bullfrogs, and I'll just enjoy being out here with everyone. Well, after we enjoyed playing with the bullfrogs and had that adventure with my dad, we went back inside. And my mom, when I was talking to her about this story, reminded me. She reminded me that in spring, bullfrogs are actually tadpoles, just like butterflies start out as caterpillars. And she went on to explain that bullfrogs and butterflies are reborn in the summer. It's when they go from a tadpole, the bullfrogs do, and they grow legs and they grow lungs so that they don't just swim in the water, but they can walk around on land and hop and breathe the air. And the same with caterpillars. Caterpillars start out and then they grow wings and they fly into butterflies. Well, my mom said bullfrogs and butterflies are reborn just like this time of year we celebrate that Jesus Christ was reborn. And that might be a silly way to say that, but what I'm talking about is that Jesus died on the cross for our sins, and we know he was buried. And you can kind of think of the butterfly in the cocoon, and you can think of the bullfrog underwater. Jesus was buried, but then the stone was rolled away, and Jesus was resurrected. He came back from the dead, and when he came back, he was glorious and wonderful, and he rose into the sky, and that's why we celebrate Easter. So, the Great Frog Hunt. When you think of Mr. Josh and the Great Frog Hunt with his dad and his brother Jimmy, I want you to remember that bullfrogs and butterflies are reborn, and so is Jesus Christ as we celebrate Easter this week. Thanks for listening to Stories with Mr. Josh. I hope you have an exciting, wonderful day. Bye, friends.